So today I'm going to go through some really important tips and why it's so important to improve on your posture and why it could be contributing to your problems. Listen up if you want to know more. So what I wanted to talk today with you guys about was to do with posture and why I find it so important that I assess every single one of my patients' posture as they come in and out of the clinic. So I will generally check posture on a relatively regular basis. I actually digitally analyze all patients' posture. So when a client comes into the clinic with me, what we do is we take a set of photos. We take two photos, one from the front, one from the side. And the reason we do that is what we want to do is we want to assess how someone is distributing their load. So the thing is with posture is there's a lot of conflict in whether posture actually makes an impact on someone's health. Now, what we essentially know about posture is controlled by a certain part of the brain called the cerebellum. Now, the purpose of the cerebellum is to actually help to engage with coordination, movement, and you guessed it, postural alignment. So it basically is a little part of our brain that triggers the muscles in our body to hold joints in certain positions. So what we essentially do, like I say, we'll take someone against a plain wall and we will take a photo of them from the front and the side. Now, what we'll do is we will actually put markers on that person's posture, either on their eyes, their nose, their shoulders, their hips, and then when we look at them from the side, we look at their ear, their shoulder, their hip, their knee, and their ankle. And what we essentially want to do is we want to really look for symmetry or as close to as possible. Now, here are a couple of reasons why. Now, if we look at, say, for example, something like someone having a very high shoulder on one side, or a very high hip on one side, the likelihood is that person is distributing their weight incorrectly. Now, like your car, if you let your tires all go flat on one side of your car, the likelihood is that car, the tires are going to wear quicker on one side. Now, not only do the tires start to get affected, but if the tire remains flat for a long period of time, what it can actually start to do is force the suspension to work harder, and as a result wear things out there. And again, that would then lead into the axle, etc., etc., etc. And so when we look at something, it may seem something very, very trivial to you, say for example, like a high hip or a hunching head forward, but what it can actually start to do is have a massive impact on the way that things start to work. Now, I told you that the cerebellum is part of the brain that's really seriously involved with posture. Most of the stimulation going to the cerebellum, which is our part of our brain involved with posture, coordination, and balance, it relies on something called joint line proprioception, which basically means is it needs the sensations or the feedback coming from your joints in your spine and in your arms and legs in order to actually tell the brain where your joints are positioned. So I'm just going to let that sink in for a second, because if your brain is reliant on the movement and the feedback from the joints, and the joints are not functioning correctly, or the posture has started to become misaligned or changed, what do you think that's going to do for the feedback to the brain? And if the brain starts to get affected, guess what? As you can tell, majority of other things are going to start to get affected, because at the end of the day, our brain is involved with coordinating pretty much every single process within the human body. So this is just one of the reasons why I check posture. The other thing obviously is that if we are distributing weight unevenly, what we can start to see is an increase or an acceleration in a lot of the degeneration processes. E.g., we can have a look at something like a lumbar disc or the cervical spine. If we see people with changes in their postural alignment, and I take an x-ray of that person, and we can see on their posture that their head is starting to go forward, commonly what we'll start to see is degeneration in the lower part of the neck, and in sometimes you can even start to see with someone with a forward head posture, degeneration into the lower back and lumbar spine as well. And again, this just comes down to a purely biomechanical point of view. If the head starts to travel forward, so does our weight. And if our weight starts to go towards the toes, we start to work different muscles and different ways. So for example, if your head goes forward, it's a little bit like holding a weight out in front of you with your arm completely out straight. If the weight was in nice and close to your body versus really far out in front of you, you're actually going to find that the weight feels a lot heavier when you hold it a long distance in front of you. And our body is exactly the same. The further we hold the head forward, the more the head starts to weigh. And again, this is the reason why we start to see those degeneration processes. Now, some of the other things that we just need to be aware of when we change our posture, say for example, I'm going to use the forward head posture a lot because it's probably the most common change in posture I see in the clinic. Say for example, if someone starts to bring their head forward and slouch, automatically we're starting to not only now affect the joints and the neurons like we've just discussed, but actually we're going to start to address our organs as well. If that head comes forward and the chest comes down, automatically we're creating less space for our lungs, our heart, and our colons. And again, so people that come in to see chiropractors will often report not only improvements in back pain and neck pain, but a lot of the time they'll see changes in their muscle tension, headaches, they'll see improvements in digestion, some people see improvements in breathing. And the reality of all of these situations is when the body is allowed to move and position and function the way that it's supposed to. And by the way, pain is a dysfunction. If a body is feeling pain or a symptom, the body is dysfunctional. You don't have to have pain to be dysfunctional, but it is a sign or a symptom that the body is starting to change. Now, we want to help you, and like I say, we can measure this. We measure this with every single one of our patients, and we can measure it both before and after we've done chiropractic care, after we've done exercises. And we know when people are not following our recommendations, because guess what? The posture will start to improve when they are following the recommendations. And as soon as people stop, guess what starts to happen? That posture starts to change. People start going back to those issues that they had before, and then they end up back in our office again anyway. Guys, I hope you really found this helpful. If you want any more tips on how you can improve your posture, there's tons and tons of content on our YouTube channel on ways that you can actually improve your posture. We've also got information on our podcast now. We've just started a podcast. We're on Spotify. We've just done our first episode with Dr. Filippo Giannati. Obviously, we've got tons and tons of content across our Facebook channel, and we've got information everywhere. You can easily pick up the phone. Just give us a shout. Speak to you soon.